The grand conclave hall of the syzygy shimmered with the captured light of three distant, dying suns, filtered through crystalline lattices that spanned the vaulted expanse above. The air, thick with the ionized scent of ancient contemplation and the hushed reverence due to the assembled archons of the federated stellar mandate, vibrated with barely contained political tremor. Elder Archon Xylos of the Cathar dynasty, his chitinous carapace reflecting the ambient spectrum in shades of obsidian and deep violet, rose slowly from his plinth, the movement itself an event that commanded immediate silence across the assembled delegations. His 6 ocular stalks focused intensely upon the central projection, a swirling, highly encrypted data stream detailing the latest probes from the uncharted fringe, specifically, the sector where the slow, inexorable expansion of the voidrot had finally met resistance. The readings remained consistent, yet utterly anomalous, Xylos intoned, his voice resonating not just through the acoustic dampeners but seemingly through the very molecular structure of the hall. The entity designation, humanity, has intercepted the vanguard of the Blight's expansion. They possess no established treaty recognition, their technological signature is crude by mandate standards. Sublight drives are still reliant on inefficient fusion reactions, and their localized energy shielding appears rudimentary at best. Yet they have halted a sector advance that has cost the mandate entire stellar armadas over the last 3 millennia. The projection shifted, displaying the sensor ghosts of the engagement, chaotic energetic bursts against the silent, suffocating creep of the voidrot tendrils. Where the mandate fleets had dissolved into passive absorption, these crude energy signatures were repelling the advance, not with overwhelming force, but with focused, almost surgical disruptions. Archon Veridia of the Cygnian Ascendancy, whose form flowed like liquid mercury constrained by invisible bonds, leaned forward, the slight displacement of her mass causing a ripple across the polished floor. Surgical Archon Xylos, or perhaps mere statistical variance, we must not mistake luck for competence. Their transmission intercepts remain incomprehensible, a torrent of high-frequency noise interspersed with patterned vibrations that suggest rudimentary, perhaps even emotional language structures. We have analyzed their history profiles, a juvenile species, barely achieving sustainable interstellar travel, obsessed with internal conflict, and utilizing volatile, high-yield chemical explosives as a primary deterrent until very recently. How can such an entity possess the strategic understanding to contain a known, existential horror? A low murmur swept through the assembled representatives of the core worlds. The fear was palpable. It wasn't the fear of battle, which the mandate understood intimately, but the corrosive fear of the unknown variable. Humanity was the unknown variable, an accidental intrusion into a carefully balanced cosmic equation. Their sudden appearance at the edge of the known boundaries, coinciding precisely with the most critical phase of the voidrot containment strategy, defied all predictive modeling. Their designation of the entity is itself telling, interjected Counselor Thrax of the Mechanist Collective, his synthetic voice devoid of cadence. They refer to the Blight not by its accepted ontological classification, but by a simplistic, almost mythological term, the darkness that eats light. Such a frame suggests a profound lack of scientific rigor, a reliance on narrative rather than empirical analysis. They fight this ultimate thermodynamic predator with mythopoeic fervor. Thrax projected a complex simulation based on the few recovered skirmish reports. The simulation showed the human defense structure, small, densely packed vessels moving in tight, unpredictable formations, crumbling under sustained pressure, only to spring back, reorient, and strike at precisely the moments when the Blight's tendrils were momentarily destabilized by residual energy signatures from prior encounters. They are reactive, not proactive. They appear to be winning through sheer, brute force application of localized energy expenditure, far exceeding what their known power matrix suggests is sustainable. Xylos maintained his stern focus. And that, Counselor, is the nexus of our deliberation. Sustainability implies a resource pool we have not cataloged, or a comprehension of energy dynamics we have not yet unlocked. We have dispatched diplomatic probes, offering standard first contact protocols, data exchange, cultural survey, resource assessment. All probes have been ignored, treated either as irrelevant background noise, or, in the case of the probe sent by the Iridian sovereignty, vaporized by a focused burst of kinetic energy that violated known principles of momentum conservation for an object of that scale. The Signian Archon Veridia pulsed slightly, a sign of deep unease. Vaporization implies aggression, Xylos. Aggression from a species we cannot even classify on the basic hegemonic threat matrix. If they view established mandate diplomacy as an act of hostility, the potential for conflict escalates dangerously. Our border defenses are stretched thin dealing with the rot. We cannot afford a tertiary conflict with a species whose operational parameters we cannot map. The philosophical core of the mandate had always rested on the principle of controlled expansion and systematic categorization of threat and asset. Humanity shattered that core. They did not fit the categories. They were not driven by discernible resource needs, nor did they seek territory in the conventional sense. They seemed driven by a singular, unwavering imperative, interdiction. They were a dam that had unexpectedly risen in the path of an ancient, cosmic flood. We have received one verifiable transmission originating from the human sector, intercepted during their most recent localized defense action, Xylos announced, the air growing noticeably colder in the hall as the projection shifted again. This time, it was not data or sensor ghosts, but a pure audiovisual feed, stabilized and translated through the mandate's most advanced, but still deeply uncertain linguistic algorithms. The image resolved, a bridge deck starkly utilitarian, bathed in the sharp white glow of operational lighting. There was no ornate regalia, no shimmering ornamentation, only functional efficiency. At the center stood a single human figure, encased in what appeared to be segmented, dark armor, utterly motionless as the battle raged visibly through the panoramic viewport, a swirling chaos of emerald fire against the encroaching darkness of the void rot. The translated voice was steady, uninflected, possessing a resonance that bypassed the linguistic barrier and struck directly at the primal structures of alien consciousness, a voice accustomed to absolute command over complex systems. This is Designation Vindicator, commanding Human Deep Space Contingent 14 Gamma. To any listening entity observing this conflict, you are interfering with a critical quarantine enforcement procedure. Cease all non-essential emissions immediately and maintain passive orbital separation of no less than 3 standard astronomical units. We are containing a level 9 bioentropic hazard. Your probing activities are introducing variables that compromise containment efficacy. We will not repeat this warning. Our primary directive is the stabilization of this sector. Your presence complicates stabilization. Silence descended upon the syzygy conclave, heavy and absolute. The alien dignitaries, beings whose lifespans measured in millennia, who had engineered nebulae and charted the slow death of galaxies, were confronted by a creature whose voice held the quiet authority of a species that expected immediate, unhesitating compliance. They used the term quarantine, whispered Archon Veridia, her liquid form momentarily freezing into sharp, geometric facets. As if they are the custodians of this entire region, they speak of our probes, our diplomatic overtures, our scientific inquiry, as interference. They equate knowledge-seeking with destabilization. Counselor Thrax's analytical systems whirred audibly. The arrogance is statistically impossible. They possess technology we estimate to be centuries behind our baseline development in materials science and theoretical physics, yet they speak with the authority of the ascendant orders. This suggests a profound disconnect between their capability and their perceived self-worth, or perhaps an intentional deception layered over a core strength we cannot perceive. Xylos slowly lowered himself back onto his plinth, the sound of his massive joints locking into place echoing like the closing of a tomb. Deception requires intent, Counselor. But what if this is not deception? What if, in their limited scope, they genuinely perceive themselves as the only competent entity in this engagement? Their entire cultural footprint from the intercepted data bursts suggests a history defined by localized, existential threats they overcame through relentless, focused application of will, often against vastly superior organizational structures. They do not negotiate, they resolve threats. He paused, his multifaceted eyes tracking the image of the human captain, impassive amidst the pyre of battle. They are not asking for inclusion in the mandate. They are issuing an operational directive to the mandate itself. The realization hung in the crystalline air, sharp and terrifying. Humanity was not a new species seeking entry. They were an anomaly acting as an unsolicited guardian, pushing back the ancient, dreaded enemy using methods incomprehensible to the mandate's most advanced strategists. We must establish direct, meaningful communicat. Ion immediately, Xylos decreed, his tone shifting from measured assessment to decisive command. If they possess a key to containing the rot that we lack, even if they arrived through means that defy our understanding of causality, we must learn it. Dispatch the emissary fleet, not with probes, not with diplomatic gestures, but with a single, heavily shielded vessel capable of mimicking the energy signature of their localized conflict response, maintaining a strictly observational profile. We will present ourselves not as potential subjects, but as highly interested, non-threatening neighbors observing a critical hazard mitigation process. Send Admiral Lorick. His diplomatic record with the volatile Zalonic hegemony is unparalleled. The political fallout within the conclave was immediate and chaotic, a flurry of panicked whispers and agitated transmissions between the various delegations. To yield the initiative, to appear supplicant before a species whose very existence was an affront to established galactic hierarchy, was anathema to the mandate's pride. Yet, the specter of the voidrot, the entropy that stripped intelligence and left only sterile dust, overrode even ancient pride. If the humans, in their baffling, localized competence, held the key, the mandate would temporarily set aside its arrogance. They would observe the dangerous, unpredictable nature of these newcomers, praying that their unpredictable aggression was directed solely outward, toward the encroaching darkness. The transit of the Aegis of Mandate, the flagship of the newly assembled observation corps under Admiral Lorick, was swift, utilizing localized fold space navigation that bypassed standard interstellar traversal, a technology the humans had not yet mastered, nor even detected. Lorick, a stately, seven-limbed being whose intellect was honed by centuries of intricate political maneuvering, monitored the final approach from his command nexus. The bridge was a study in muted, organic technology, surfaces that shifted color according to Lorick's cognitive state, instruments that read intention rather than input. Status of the human operational zone, navigator, Lorick transmitted, his thought patterns modulated into audible resonance for the bridge crew. Admiral, we are emerging from fold space at the designated buffer zone. Energy dampeners holding at 98% efficiency. Sensor ghost readings indicate the primary human vessel, designated Vindicator, remains engaged. The local environment is highly energetic. Residual causality distortions are significant. We are detecting rapid entropy shifts consistent with the Blight's localized absorption patterns, though the decay rate appears dramatically slowed. The navigator's voice carried a distinct note of bewildered awe. Lorick reviewed the visual feed relayed from their forward observers. The scene was one of controlled violence. The human vessel, Vindicator, was small, angular, and deceptively simple, bristling with weapon emplacements that seemed crudely mounted compared to the elegant integrated systems of the Mandate fleets. Yet, around it churned a miniature maelstrom of localized destruction. The Blight's tendrils, which usually engulfed matter and energy with silent finality, were meeting shimmering, transient barriers of emerald light, barriers that snapped into existence microseconds before impact and dissipated immediately after deflecting the corrosive energy. Observe their kinetic output, Lorick instructed, directing the bridge's attention to the human armament discharge. They are not utilizing directed energy beams or gravitic manipulation as we understand it. They are projecting highly energized, discrete packets of mass, projectiles, at velocities that approach the theoretical limit of material cohesion. And they are targeting the nodal points of the Blight's energy exchange matrix, not its physical extremities. This was the crux of the enigma. The Mandate fought the voidrot by attempting to negate its fundamental interaction with spacetime. The humans were attacking its metabolism. Lorick made his decision. He would not hide. Overt observation was the only language that conveyed seriousness to a species that acted with such bold, unmasked aggression. Activate passive cultural beacon frequency. Broadcast the Mandate's standard first contact charter, simplified to its most fundamental ethical premises: non-aggression, mutual benefit, shared defense against entropy. Simultaneously, initiate low-level energy mirroring. Match the residual kinetic discharge signatures of the Vindicator at 1/10 scale. We will appear as a powerful, yet non-threatening, echo. Let them see we understand the nature of their engagement. The flagship subtly adjusted its position, slipping into a slow orbit around the contested zone, its massive hull cloaked in fields designed to mimic the background radiation distortions caused by the ongoing battle, a feat of techno. Logical subtlety that usually took decades of calibration. The effect was instantaneous. The chaotic energy patterns surrounding the Vindicator abruptly stabilized. The erratic firing patterns ceased. Through the static and interference, a clear, focused signal pierced the Mandate's sophisticated shielding. A direct communication link, bypassing their standard decryption protocols with alarming ease, establishing a line directly to Loric's command nexus. "This is Vindicator," the same flat, resonant voice returned, the translation instantaneous and perfect, indicating a capacity for rapid, deep-level linguistic analysis that was startling. "Mandate signature detected. Your mimicry is crude, Admiral Loric. Your energy damping fields are operating at a calculated inefficiency of 4.7%. A design flaw we noted in your historical probe data from Sector 7. Explain your presence within the quarantine perimeter immediately. You are contaminating the operational field." Loric felt the digital equivalent of a flush spreading across his consciousness. A species they had categorized as technologically primitive had not only detected their advanced cloaking technology, but had analyzed its structural deficiencies in real time and identified the Admiral by name based on intercepted archives. "Human Captain," Loric replied, carefully modulating his voice to project an aura of immense, yet restrained authority. "I am Admiral Loric of the Syzygy Conclave. We are here to offer aid to share knowledge concerning the entity you term the Voidrot. We recognize your commitment, but your methods appear costly in resources and localized stability. We seek alliance, not conflict." There was a pause on the line, a pause of calculated assessment that stretched into a geological age for the rapid-fire processing minds of the Mandate bridge crew. Then the human responded, the voice laced with something that might have been weary disdain. "Aid. Admiral, you have monitored this conflict for a standard cycle based on your energy profile fluctuations. In that cycle, your best effort was the deployment of 3 observation probes, 2 of which were destroyed by residual instability from our own engagement protocols. Alliance is predicated on shared threat assessment and mutual capacity. We possess the capacity, you possess only the threat. Your civilization has endured this entity for 3,000 cycles, attempting containment through vast, ineffective siege warfare. We have been aware of the rot for 18 months. We have halted its advance entirely in this sector in 72 hours. The bluntness struck the Mandate observers with the force of a physical blow. It was not hostile, merely factual, delivered with the cold objectivity of a thermodynamic equation. "Your assessment is flawed," Loric countered, summoning his diplomatic reserves. "The Mandate has maintained the integrity of the core worlds against the rot for millennia. Your species' introduction into this area is recent. We preserved the stability you now exploit." "Preserved," the human voice repeated, the tone shifting subtly, becoming sharper. "Admiral, your concept of preservation involves erecting massive, energy-intensive static barriers designed to shunt the rot into adjacent, less populated sectors. That is not preservation. It is tactical deferral, a transfer of burden. We have observed the resultant gravitational collapses in the Cathar exclusion zone when your deferral fields inevitably degraded. We are here to eliminate the threat, not manage its overflow." This was a devastating piece of intelligence. The Mandate's most sacred defense protocol, the one they presented to their populace as the pinnacle of strategic endurance, was being openly dismissed by a species they could trace back to a single, volatile, resource-scarce planet only a few centuries prior. "Captain," Loric said, his internal processors racing to recalibrate the entire diplomatic approach. "If your methods are so superior, why have you not contacted the Mandate? Why utilize kinetic projectiles when sustained energy modulation is demonstrably more efficient against non-corporeal entities?" The human paused again, and Loric sensed a shift in the nature of the entity on the Vindicator. It was no longer just a commander. It was a focus point for a deeper institutional understanding. "We do not contact entities that have demonstrated systemic failure in crisis management," the captain stated. "And you ask why kinetic projectiles? Because kinetic energy delivered at relativistic speeds is predictable. It is governed by mechanics, not emergent field theory. We are not fighting the rot with exotic physics, Admiral. We are fighting it with brute, unforgiving application of localized force until the entropy cascade collapses. Efficiency is secondary to certainty when facing an entity that consumes certainty itself. We sacrifice local stability for guaranteed, if temporary, annihilation of the threat nexus." Loric understood then. The mandate fought with elegance, seeking the fundamental equation. The humans fought with hammers, understanding that sometimes the fundamental equation was best solved by ensuring the system could no longer run long enough to produce an answer. We request permission to deploy specialized observation units, non-weaponized, to better understand the mechanics of this localized annihilation, Lorik requested, dropping all pretense of equality. He was now supplicant, seeking instruction. Denied, the captain responded instantly. Your observational units introduce thermal drift and localized space-time distortion that complicates our targeting matrix. However, we require assistance. Lorik's hope surged. Name your requirement, Captain. We will mobilize our entire industrial capacity. We require data on the ROT's deep-spectrum energy harmonics beyond the region you have quarantined. Specifically, we need deep penetration scans of the gravitational lensing, effects observed near the Perseus arm, an area you designate as structurally unstable due to historical containment failures. We believe the ROT is using those structural weaknesses as latent energy conduits to bypass our localized suppression fields. We cannot risk deploying long-range sensors for fear of revealing our primary defensive positions to the ROT's nascent intelligence. You possess the infrastructure to conduct this deep scan passively, from a distance we cannot currently attain without compromising our tactical posture. The request was precise, technical, and deeply alarming. They were not asking for resources. They were demanding intelligence gathering that the mandate had considered suicidal to attempt. It implied the humans were already planning the next phase of engagement, a proactive strike far beyond the current front lines. We can execute the deep scan, Lorik confirmed, feeling the weight of an entire civilization shifting onto his shoulders. But for this cooperation, we require a full schematic briefing on your defensive technology, the composition of the kinetic projectiles, the modulation frequency of your energy barriers, and the operational profile of your warp displacement drive. A low, mechanical chuckle, utterly devoid of humor, emanated from the Vindicator. Admiral, you mistake our position. We are not entering a trade agreement. We are utilizing your existing observation assets for a necessary subtask required for sector stabilization. We offer you the benefit of continued existence in this sector, a benefit you have demonstrably failed to secure on your own merits. You will receive the data you require, a subset of our harmonic mitigation algorithms, only after successful delivery of the required sensor package. Until then, you will maintain your current passive observation profile, or we will treat your flagship as another source of contamination. This was not diplomacy. It was the cold, rational imposition of superior force, delivered without a single shot fired. The humans were not arrogant. They were simply operating under a framework where inefficiency equaled death, and they viewed the ancient mandate as dangerously inefficient. Understood, Captain, Lorik managed, bowing his great frame in the silent communication matrix. The data transmission will commence within 3 standard cycles. The next weeks were a blur of intense, almost painful integration for the mandate's scientific core. Admiral Lorik ordered the mobilization of the oldest, most powerful deep scan array in the Cathar armories, repurposing it for passive reception and focusing it exactly where the human captain directed. The ancient, massive listening posts, designed to chart the slow decay of universal constants, were now pressed into service to listen to the immediate demands of an aggressive, young species. The data that began to trickle back from the human vessel, designated as the promised subset of harmonic mitigation algorithms, was not a schematic, but a theoretical framework. It detailed a method of forcing localized field resonance within entropic structures, essentially, causing the voidrot to vibrate itself apart by hitting its internal structural frequency. The Signian Archon Veridia, utilizing a secure, one-way quantum channel back to the conclave hall, expressed the collective awe and terror of the mandate's philosophical centers. Xylos, this is not merely advanced science. This is applied metaphysics. They are demonstrating a command over the fundamental interactions of energy and decay that surpasses the accumulated knowledge of the ascendant orders. They have bypassed centuries of theoretical work by treating the universe as a massive, complex machine that can be disassembled with the correct tool. Xylos, observing the ongoing operation from a secure station, responded with grim clarity. They are not utilizing theoretical advantage, Veridia. They are utilizing pragmatic advantage. They have determined that the time spent in philosophical debate over the nature of the rot is time the rot uses to consume. They act first and explain the resulting physics later. This is the core difference. We sought to understand the rot perfectly before engaging. They engage perfectly first and then analyze the resulting data stream. The human concept of dangerous was not rooted in destructive capability, Lorick realized, but in unpredictable commitment. They committed fully, utterly, without the internal political hesitation that plagued the mandate. When the deep scan data from the Perseus arm was finally delivered, the reaction from the Vindicator was a singular, high-bandwidth packet burst. It contained not just confirmation of the rot's energy conduits, but detailed predictive models showing where the main mass of the void rot was attempting to coalesce. A vast, hidden structure deeper in the uncharted fringe, an ancient nexus they had missed entirely, shielded by layers of manipulated gravity and space-time distortions. The message accompanying the data was short, professional, and devastatingly clear. Data received, nexus confirmed. Admiral Lorick, your infrastructure proved minimally adequate for the required data acquisition. We are moving to Phase 2, termination of nexus. We require immediate large-scale diversion of your heavy kinetic armaments. Redirect all available long-range bombardment batteries towards the coordinates logged in the attached file. Do not target the nexus directly. Target the 3 peripheral gravitational anchors designated Alpha, Beta, and Gamma. These anchors are stabilizing the spacetime shroud around the primary entity. Destruction of the anchors will expose the nexus to immediate structural collapse under its own accrued entropic mass. Failure to fire within the next 72 standard hours will result in immediate withdrawal of human support and the voiding of all implied protections for mandate territory. The tension in the conclave hall, which had been simmering, now reached boiling point. To surrender control of their strategic weapons platforms to an unknown, unvetted external species was an act of political suicide, a violation of the sacred oath of self-determination that bound the mandate together. Counselor Thrax of the Mechanist Collective rose, his synthetic shell vibrating with controlled fury. This is unacceptable. They treat us as logistical drones. They demand we commit our most powerful, irreplaceable strategic assets, the orbital kinetic launchers, the very keys to our core world defense grid, to a target they cannot even physically confirm visually. This smacks of infiltration, a Trojan mechanism designed to disarm the mandate. And if he is correct, Thrax, Xylos's voice was low, weighted with historical memory. If we wait 72 hours debating the legality of compliance and this nexus accelerates its growth, what will be the state of the Cathar sector then? We have seen the slow death of sectors overrun by the rot. It is not a swift end. It is a gradual, intelligent erasure. We have spent 3 millennia managing the decline. These humans offer a cessation. Lorick, patched directly into the conclave feed from the Aegis, intervened with rare, unprompted direct address. Archons, the data is sound. Their predictive models regarding the gravitational anchors are too precise to be a fabrication. They are seeing the threat on a level we cannot, perhaps through sensory apparatus evolved to perceive reality outside the constraints of standard baryon physics. They are asking us to use our heavy artillery as directed demolition charges. We must trust the results, not the protocol. Protocol failed us 3,000 years ago when we first encountered the rot. The debate raged for nearly a full cycle. Fear of the human power, the sheer, cold efficacy displayed during the brief observation period, warred with the mandate's ingrained sense of political sovereignty. Finally, Xylos made the defining, agonizing choice. We comply, Xylos stated, the words a final surrender of mandate pride. We deploy the kinetic arrays under the direct targeting guidance of the Vindicator. Admiral Lorick, you will personally supervise the transfer of command authority for the firing solutions. If the humans betray the trust placed in them, if this is an elaborate disarmament scheme, we will have sacrificed our strategic depth for nothing. But if they are indeed our salvation, we will owe them a debt that supersedes all known galactic charters. The coordinated strike was a spectacle that dwarfed any previous display of mandate power. Thousands of orbital platforms, stationed across hundreds of light years, their massive energy capacitors charged to critical levels, focused their fire not upon the visible enemy, but upon 3 distinct, non-luminous points in the deep void, the gravitational anchors. The human vessel, Vindicator, transmit. T-TED the firing solution with a millisecond precision that left no room for manual calculation by the mandate gunnery stations. Firing solution accepted. The captain's voice echoed across the Allied command channels, devoid of excitement. Execution in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Fire. The universe seemed to crack under the synchronized impact. The resulting wave of pure, directed kinetic energy, amplified by the mandate's focused energy discharge from their primary weapon systems, struck the gravitational anchors simultaneously. It was not an explosion of light, but a sudden, violent tearing of spacetime itself. For a full agonizing minute, the data stream showed nothing but feedback noise. The fabric of reality warped beyond immediate comprehension. The mandate observers braced for the inevitable. The feedback should have indicated catastrophic system overload, or, worse, the complete annihilation of their own assets caught in the backwash of the rot's sudden collapse. Then the noise cleared. The visual feed, enhanced by the Vindicator's own superior sensor package, revealed the aftermath. The 3 anchor points were gone, not vaporized, but structurally unmade. The immense, swirling mass of the Voidrot Nexus, which had been held in its stable, hidden location by those artificial gravitational fields, suddenly found its supporting structure removed. The Nexus, massive beyond comprehension, a cold, light-absorbing sphere that seemed to drink the very luminescence of the surrounding stellar fields, began to collapse inward upon itself with unnatural speed. It did not explode. It imploded, the sheer mass generating a localized singularity that lasted only fractions of a second before dissipating into inert energy, as if the rot itself had experienced a sudden, fatal systemic shutdown. The silence that followed was the deepest silence the mandate had ever known. It was the silence of absolute, unambiguous victory over an enemy previously deemed eternal. Admiral Lorick stared at the pristine void where the Nexus had been. It is gone, the primary threat neutralized. The response from the Vindicator was immediate and shockingly brief. Confirmed, containment parameters restored, threat profile reduced to residual dissipation vectors. Admiral Lorick, you have successfully executed necessary demolition procedures. Your assistance is concluded. The implication hung heavy. You are a tool and the task is complete. Captain, Lorick transmitted, overriding the protocol he had just agreed to uphold, driven by a need to understand the profound cultural chasm between them. We committed our strategic reserve based on your guidance. We demand a full accounting. Who are you? What civilization operates with such terrifying, focused efficiency against an enemy you claim to have only known for 18 months? Show us your technology. Show us your history. We require context for this miracle. The Vindicator did not respond immediately with words. Instead, it executed a maneuver that defied every known law of propulsion and mass manipulation. The small, angular vessel, which they had presumed to be running on volatile fusion chemistry, executed a near-instantaneous jump, not into fold space, but directly across the distance between the Aegis of Mandate and the Vindicator, traversing light years in zero time, bypassing all established warp calculations. The human ship stopped less than a kilometer from the flagship, its dark hull a stark silhouette against the distant galaxies. Then its primary sensor array, previously hidden, unfolded. It was not a dish or an emitter array. It was a vast, complex lattice of crystalline structures that began to glow with an inner, pulsing emerald light, mirroring the defensive shields they had witnessed earlier. The captain's voice returned, now layered with a chorus of modulated tones that suggested multiple conscious entities speaking in perfect unison. Admiral Lorick, you ask who we are humanity, and we are not new to this fight. You fight the symptom of the Voidrot, we fight the source. The emerald light intensified, and the massive crystalline lattice of the Vindicator's sensor array began projecting a visual field onto the hull of the Mandate flagship. Not data, but a historical recording played at a blinding pace. The Mandate observers watched, horrified, as the recording depicted not a species evolving from a single planet, but a desperate, multi-species coalition, the true ancestry of humanity, fighting the same Voidrot 10,000 cycles ago, across a different arm of the galaxy. They witnessed species genetically similar to the Cathar and Cygnian Archons fighting alongside crude, early versions of human vessels. The conflict was depicted as a galactic war of attrition, a slow bleed against an insurmountable tide. Then came the reveal. The recording showed the coalition's greatest scientists not attempting to destroy the rot, but attempting to understand its origin. Hay traced the energy signatures, not to a natural cosmological event, but to a massive artificial construct, a machine of incomprehensible scale, buried in the deepest void, emitting the entropic decay signature that manifested as the rot. "The rot is not the threat, Admiral," the synchronized human voice explained, the tone now deeply serious, stripped of any previous casual dismissiveness. "It is merely the waste product, the exhaust plume of a megastructure older than your current galactic epoch. We called it the Scourge Engine, the harvester of cosmic potential. Our ancestors sacrificed everything to stop it. They failed to destroy the engine, but they succeeded in forcing it into dormancy. They couldn't eradicate it. They could only force it into a state of low-power maintenance mode." The recording accelerated, showing the remnants of the coalition, the surviving ancestors of humanity, fleeing the devastation, carrying specialized knowledge and a singular purpose across the eons. "For 10,000 cycles, our directive has been singular: prevent the engine from reawakening. The forced dormancy required incredibly precise, periodic kinetic disruption applied to specific nodal points to maintain the systemic imbalance, the very points we just had you strike. We established local defense protocols to monitor for signs of reignition, hiding our capabilities, focusing solely on keeping the engine quiet." Lorik felt the foundations of his reality tremble. "But the rot is advancing now. Why is the engine reawakening?" "Because," the human voice stated, the chorus suddenly becoming a single, chilling articulation, "the ancient stabilization points you observed being destroyed were not the only stabilization points. They were merely the peripheral emitters designed to test external defenses. The true, primary stabilization matrix was not built by your ancestors. It was built by yours." The projection on the Aegis's hull shifted one last time. It showed the Mandate's own, celebrated containment barriers, the massive, energy-intensive static fields the Mandate had deployed for millennia to shunt the rot away from the core worlds. "Your core world containment fields," the human stated, the finality of the accusation hanging in the void, "were not designed to repel the rot. They were designed, inadvertently or deliberately, to feed it. Every time your civilization stabilized its local region, you were unknowingly providing the perfect, low-resistance conduit for the engine to draw energy and begin its reawakening cycle. Your defense protocols were, in fact, the engine's primary maintenance cycle. The Cathar hegemony had been the unwitting custodians of a cosmic reboot sequence. The Mandate's millennia of struggle was merely the slow, systematic preparation of their sector for the next, larger harvest. "We did not appear to offer aid, Admiral," the human concluded, the emerald light of the sensor array pulsing rhythmically, like a heartbeat of pure, unyielding purpose. "We appeared because the system your people built was about to trigger the engine's full power cycle. We had to destroy those peripheral anchors quickly to force the engine into a hard reset, pulling it out of the high-power cycle your presence was enabling. We needed your heavy fire to create the necessary shockwave, without exposing our own, more delicate, long-range monitoring systems to the backlash." Lorik could only whisper, the concept too vast to process immediately. "Then, what now? If the engine is merely reset, it will awaken again." "Precisely," the human voice confirmed. "The hard reset buys us a window, a very narrow window. The engine's deep core is now exposed, but only for a short duration before it recalibrates its energy shielding. We require your knowledge of this sector, the specific gravitational resonances and dark matter densities around the core of the galaxy, to plot a single, decisive strike that will neutralize the central processing core of the engine permanently." The Vindicator shifted slightly, moving closer to the Aegis, its angular frame conveying an alien sense of urgency. "We have exhausted our ancestral reserves maintaining this Cold War against the engine. We needed a partner with massive, expendable kinetic projection capabilities and intimate knowledge of the target zone's local physics. We needed a species willing to act decisively when faced with overwhelming evidence of systemic failure. We needed a species that, despite its political arrogance, possessed the capacity to overcome its own inertia when truly threatened." The captain paused, allowing the weight of the accusation and the plea to settle simultaneously upon the Mandate's command structure. "We judged that humanity, when confronted with true existential threat that contradicted its established paradigms, would prove itself capable of immediate, pragmatic restructuring. We gambled that when faced with the truth, that your entire civilization was funk. Shanali serving the enemy, you would choose survival over sovereignty. We gambled that you would prove capable of dangerous cooperation. Admiral Lorik looked out at the silent, vast expanse where the enemy nexus had just been obliterated. He looked at the stark, functional power of the small human vessel hovering nearby, a single entity that had just forced the ancient Mandate Empire to dismantle its own defense infrastructure. "You placed your faith in our capacity for destructive pragmatism," Lorik stated, a profound sense of humility settling over him, replacing the centuries of accumulated political certainty. "Human captain, you have shown us the true face of the enemy and the true face of desperate survival. We owe you not just an alliance, but a fundamental reevaluation of our place in the cosmos. Instruct us. The kinetic arrays are yours. Tell us where to aim. We are ready to fight for existence, not merely to manage decline." The emerald light on the Vindicator's sensor array softened, shifting to a warm, steady gold, the first truly non-aggressive color they had witnessed emanating from the vessel. "Welcome to the fight, Admiral Lorik," the unified voice of humanity replied. "The coordinates for the core ejection chamber are being transmitted now. Prepare for the final phase. The universe is far larger and far older than the Mandate ever suspected. And now we proceed together.